Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
And I'm Sam Hughes.
Yeah, if you didn't figure it out, we are back for our second annual Star Wars Nerd Fest here on the TEConnect podcast. We are going to get into a little bit about Sam's relationship with Star Wars. She's kind of the newbie on the episode this year. We're going to talk about what happened at the end of last season on Mandalorian. We're going to get into Star Wars visions, talk about what's coming in the future of Star Wars, and maybe what the future of Star Wars should or shouldn't be from a trio of nerd fans. It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, folks. Yes, we're back. We're having fun.
We are.
This is our favorite episode of the year, let's be honest. Nothing against all of our other fantastic guests, all the cool stuff we talk about on the channel, but look, we're nerds. We like to talk about nerdy stuff, and we love Star Wars.
We have to decompress.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where we get to let loose and just have a fun, straight up fun podcast here at the end of the year. We did this last year. Everybody seemed to like it. We loved it. So, hey, we're just going to keep doing it. So, first of all, let's start with Sam. Sam Hughes, BlueStar's resident digital media marketing person, writer, PR extraordinaire. Anything we ask Sam to do, Sam does for us, and we appreciate her for that.
And resident youngster? What a millennial?
I guess.
Not really. I mean, now that you're married and everything, we can't,
Can't poke as much.
Not as much fun at you anymore, on that front. But
younger than us. Let's just put it that way. Yes. I will also point out that our producer, Marco, who does not seem to want to ever be on camera, but he is on mic today. Yes. Say hello, Marco.
Hello.
Yes. So he's going to weigh into. He did on our episode last year.
Absolutely.
He's a big Star Wars geek too, so we wanted his input on some of this stuff. But I'm going to start off with Sam here, since you are kind of new to this discussion with us. What's your relationship with Star Wars? We talked about our own last year. Obviously you are younger, so I'm sure the prequels, were kind of the thing, when you were pretty young. But tell us about your relationship with Star Wars, how you got into it, and kind of, how you feel about it now.
Yeah, so I'm one of four. I'm the oldest, and I was the three of us girls forever, and then my parents had a boy, and he was the baby, and he was spoiled. And so everything he kind of got into, we just embraced as a family. We went on trips for him. We watched countless movies for him and just made it our personalities, rather. And so he eventually got into Star Wars, and that was our life. He had all the Lego setups. He had all the video games.
Wow.
We watched everything. We played it. I think, honestly, he would start Empire Strikes Back the same time every day, because every time I got home from school, it was the same scene.
Yes.
And for a while, I was like, I feel like I've only seen this one 15-second scene. I'm gonna invest in it. And so we started watching it with him and engaging with things that he was really into, like Boba Fett, and he's super excited for that Disney Plus spinoff.
Yeah.
So it really just kind of started with him. And then when I met Chris, my husband, he's a super Star Wars nerd. I mean, all his things are basically my things. This is his that I shrunk down to fit me.
Which, for those of you that can't see, it's a Christmas.
Yeah, a Star Wars Christmas sweater. Yes.
Hoth, sweet Hoth.
There you go.
Love it.
It's awesome.
So yeah, and we just, all of our friends are, nerds to that capacity. So it's fun.
There you go.
I like the fact that, most people, they would talk about a youngest sibling who was spoiled and got everything. There'd be a lot of resentment in that conversation.
No.
You actually sounded like you were like, yeah, we love this kid. He's awesome. We all got on board with his stuff and got into Star Wars.
We became more
over
culturally with it.
That's
our
cool.
movie categories and things that he got into, we were like, oh, awesome.
Nice.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, originally, when I was talking about doing this episode, we were going to do kind of a deep dive into the original trilogy.
Yes.
But as I started putting together the talking points, I was like, man, there's just so much stuff to talk about new Star Wars that's happened over the last year and what's to come that I think we can easily fill out.
We had some
plenty of time.
cliffhangers last year, didn't we? Because
we did.
They're going to do the announcements and whatnot.
That's a good point. Yeah, before when we recorded last year's, it was maybe a couple weeks before. There was maybe 2 or 3 episodes of The Mandalorian left for the season.
Correct.
And they were some of the biggest episodes,
Correct.
which we'll talk about in a moment.
Yeah.
By the way, spoiler alerts in this show.
If you haven't watched it,
we will be spoiling the end of The Mandalorian season 2. We will be spoiling a little bit of Star Wars Visions, Star Wars in general. If you are someone who, my thing is like, I don't know how you can be just someone who just like may be interested in Star Wars and may not. You've probably taken a stand on where you are with it.
Yeah.
But if for some reason you haven't watched some of the newest stuff yet, we will have some spoilers about some of that. But yeah, there was all these new announcements that were coming up. Like I think maybe a week or so after we recorded that is when Disney had a huge. Disney and Lucasfilm had a huge press, discussion. Yeah, and they announced all these new series and movies that were on the way. That some of which is coming fairly soon, some of which is falling by the wayside. We'll get into that too. So let's start off with The Mandalorian though, because we had a good discussion about that last year and where we were, and we were talking about some of the stuff that we knew was coming. So in the last few episodes from where we left off, Ahsoka was introduced.
Yes.
And I mentioned
I think you fawned over.
Oh, yeah. I mentioned last year, Ahsoka
gosh.
Tano is one of my absolute favorite Star Wars characters, if not my favorite. Sam, I think you are a pretty big fan of her, too.
She's a badass. She's great.
Yeah.
So this is someone that for those of us, I know, Dean, you're not as heavily immersed that you haven't watched some of the cartoons.
Correct.
But for those who have watched the Clone Wars cartoon and Rebels, she's a prominent figure in both of those shows. Just an exceptionally cool character. The lightsabers that Sam lit up at the beginning of the episode are her lightsabers. Actually, she dual wields. She has one that's kind of a more short, daggery one. She was Anakin Skywalker's apprentice, so she was his Padawan during the Clone Wars that he trained. And then at some point, she kind of broke off from the Jedi, the overall Jedi Council, kind of left things, became a gray Jedi, as we referred to it, and went off on her own. Well, she was introduced in The Mandalorian, played by Rosario Dawson. Very cool episode. She was the one who told us that Baby Yoda's name is Grogu. We finally got his name. We still call him Baby Yoda, but he's Grogu is his actual name. And that led into a series of events where the Mandalorian took him to commune with the Jedi and, reach out through the Force to find another Jedi. He ended up getting kidnapped by the Imperial forces that were still out there. And at the end of the season, in this big battle where they were trying to get him back, Luke Skywalker showed up in the final episode to bring Grogu with him to train him, which was very unexpected. No one really thought that was. Everyone knew something big was going to happen, and we kind of figured.
Theories.
Yeah, we all these theories about what Jedi might show up. I don't think any of us really expected it to be him, but they did a digitally de-aged Mark Hamill to show up, kick some butt, destroy a bunch of droids, and take Grogu away at the very end.
Yes.
So
in epic form.
Yes.
I mean, not just destroy some droids. They're the dark stormtroopers, right?
Yeah, like dark stormtroopers or dark troopers or something.
The dark troopers. Yeah. I mean, like the ones you can't blow. I found the whole thing very satisfying. I mean, the whole lead up to it was like, it was just juicy, right?
Yeah,
I mean, the story was just evolving, and everything that you just mentioned, reaching out through the Force to find somebody is like, whoa, what's going to happen here? Just the drama around that. And then this single X-Wing fighter comes through, and it's like, ooh, it's like that tingling started.
Now,
like,
did any of you honestly at that point assume that it was
No,
Luke? Or were you just kind of like, I don't know what's happening
I definitely did. I think.
Did you?
Oh, you did?
Because when Bo-Katan and everyone in the room was like, oh, great, 1X, awesome,
right.
sweet.
They're like, that's going to help.
Here comes our rescue. And then Chris and I looked at each other at 6 a.m. when we watched it, because I made him wake up so early to watch it. So I wouldn't have to come to work, and you all would be like, did you watch it? Did you watch it? And I was like, no. So he sleepily turned to me, and we were like, Luke. We knew. We just totally knew.
All right.
I think it was funny. I got to watch it. I was actually off that day because my son had surgery and had some eye surgery that day. And he was passed out on the couch, which is the other reason I got to watch this, because otherwise he would have been demanding Muppet Babies or something.
Right. Yeah.
He's actually getting into Star Wars now.
Oh, well, there you go.
But at the time, he wouldn't have been interested in that. And so I'm sitting there watching. My wife, who is not really a Star Wars person, she'll watch some stuff here and there, but she's not really big into it. And that moment happened when he stepped down. My wife goes, "You're excited right now, aren't you?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." You have no idea how excited I am about this. I will also point out they brought Boba Fett into those last few episodes.
Yes.
So we had already been hinted at Boba Fett. I remember telling you that they'd already hinted at him earlier in the season because they showed the guy who played the Jango Fett clone in the prequel trilogy, which was made to assume that was what Boba Fett, even though we'd never seen Boba Fett without his armor in the old movies. So he was finally brought in, as well, ended up working with the Mandalorian. They worked together in order to.
So I got to ask you, because I'm not that deep on Boba Fett, we learned a little bit more about him in the Mandalorian, right? That we didn't know coming up to this?
Not too much, really. I mean, like, all we know is he survived the Sarlacc on Tatooine, apparently. And his armor, at some point, he'd lost his armor. I don't know if he lost it in that or not. I assume this new series that's coming will get some backstory about what happened between.
Yeah. But prior to this, though, I mean, it just seemed
not.
Yes.
Well, we'd had young Boba Fett in the prequels with his father Jango. You saw his father get killed, and like he was all bitter about it. Now, the Clone Wars cartoon did have some stuff with young Boba Fett as well.
Gotcha.
Not really anything super significant. Just kind of like a little bit of what he was doing after that.
The path he goes down, because he kind of gets involved with some like crime syndicates, and he's a boss lord. Yeah, like
exactly.
directing people at like 12.
Which appears like that's going to have some context now in in the series. That's
obviously he was working for Jabba in the original trilogy when he was hunting down Han and brought him, to.
So we knew that part of it, but it felt like we had just a little bit more context about his personality and who he is.
Like he's not kind of like the Mandalorian, where he's basically like he'd become at some point kind of a gun for hire type person, but not necessarily a bad guy. He's not like in with the Empire. Like he's just more of like, hey, I go where the money goes, and sometimes I do some bad things, but kind of shades of gray kind of guy. Sorts. Maybe a little more on the darker side of the gray than the Mandalorian is, than Din Djarin or whatever is, but not quite at that far. Marco, what about you? How did you feel about the final batch of episodes for Mandalorian season 2?
Oh, I was like you. I was super excited.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Immediately
watched that scene of him coming down the hallway, killing things like 3 or 4 times.
Which was very reminiscent of Vader at the end of Rogue One, tearing apart the Republic troops.
Yes.
Which I think is interesting because Mandalorian to me feels more like Rogue One than any of the other films. And that's part of why I love Rogue One so much, because I think it's such a it's a down and gritty kind of Star Wars film. Like it actually is a war film. I think it's one of the things I like about it is it feels like a war film and not just a space fantasy kind of thing. And a lot of Mandalorian feels that way too. It's basically a kind of a samurai Western hybrid. Yeah, exactly. Kind of fusion kind of thing. Especially the episode where they did introduce Ahsoka the Jedi. Was totally like an Akira Kurosawa film, like the Fortress or whatever.
Absolutely,
like this lone Ronin samurai takes on an entire city, and is there to protect the defenseless and take down the evil. The evil people that are ruling over the city. And that's essentially what that episode was.
Which I thought was well done as well.
Which, by the way, also there was a mention, which, again, huge for those of us that are part of the extended universe of Star Wars stuff. She's there because she's trying to get to a woman who is like the magistrate of that town, who is kind of ruling over that town. She's there to get to her because she wants information. And the information she asked for, and it's just a brief end of the scene after they fight, is where is Grand Admiral Thrawn? Now, for those of us who are in the know, way back to extended universe days back in the late 80s, early 90s, when the first books started coming out about Star Wars, when we assumed there was never going to be any more movies.
No, right. Movies were done.
The first series of books was a trilogy called the Thrawn trilogy, as it's come to be known, which is all about this admiral from the Empire, one of the few non-human humans that the Emperor allowed into the greater Empire and into the higher echelons of the Empire, coming out of the woodwork to try to put together an army of ships or whatever, a fleet of ships to try to take out the New Republic before it gets off the ground, basically.
Gotcha.
Amazing character. Everybody loved him. It was a great character. When Disney bought Lucasfilm, they wiped out all of that continuity, but they decided to bring Thrawn into the Rebels cartoon. And now there's a whole new series of books with him that are canonical now, and I'm assuming he's going to show up in this new Ahsoka series at some point, too.
Yes.
So again, those of us that are in the know got very excited about that. Not only did we get to see Ahsoka, but we got a Grand Admiral Thrawn reference, and we're all like,
yeah, really, right, yeah.
A new big bad, because who else,
Yeah,
so.
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else that we want to talk about with Mandalorians? What do we expect to see next? I think we're probably
I
another
don't
year
know.
off from another season.
So what do we do now? Because he took Grogu and
I guess the
what do we do?
biggest plot point that's left out there is at the end of that episode, he takes the Darksaber.
That's true.
Because he defeats
That's
Moff
true.
Gideon.
That's true.
And Bo-Katan had wanted the Darksaber because she's been trying to reclaim Mandalore for the Mandalorians and become queen there again, basically.
Yep.
And whoever holds the Darksaber basically is supposed to lead the Mandalorians.
Mandalore.
So but then she was very upset because he beat Gideon. He got the Darksaber, and he
Even though he was like, no, just take it.
Yeah, he wanted to give it to
you
her,
can't
and
just
she's
do
like,
that.
no, I have to win it in battle. I have to take it from you. I can't just...
Your dead hand.
Right. So I'm assuming there'll be some kind of tension around that, and we may get into more of like maybe the the reinvention of Mandalore, and I feel like that's probably going to be the thematic element of the next season is maybe him rejoining with the Mandalorians again, and trying to rebuild that society.
There's going to be an ego play because I think that he does such a good job. His current character is, massaging his ego where he needs it to be, right? But now he's going to be in this position where, well, no, you rule. So how's that going to play into his ego, which would typically not be something that he's comfortable with.
Right.
So is that what they're going to play with? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do think it would provide a lot of reprieve for us fans who love the Clone Wars and Rebels, because I think that was the Bo-Katan and the learning the backstory behind the Mandalore and the Darksaber and all of that was such good context. But yeah, the tension, I feel like you could just sense when he's like, yeah, here, just take it, and she's got this really not great look on her face, like
she's
snap.
not happy about
we
this.
kind of became friends, and now I'm gonna have to kill you, so this is awkward, please don't take any hard feelings. So I think that would be nice. I love all the advances and the Disney Plus shows that they keep putting out, because I feel like it's literally just plot holes that I'm like, thanks for filling that, because that was up to my interpretation for such a long time, but now awesome. So exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Marco, what about you? Any expectations or predictions for the
So
next
have
season?
you seen some of the new images from Mandalorian 3 yet?
No, I wasn't aware there was any.
Sebastian Stan, they have images of him playing Luke.
That's a good...
And so now the question is, are they going to do that, or are they going to follow Luke some?
Well, I knew there was people that were suggesting that he would be a good person to play a young Luke.
Side by side, they look pretty
Yeah,
spot on.
I agree with that, yeah. That's a good point, because I can't imagine we're just not going to see Grogu again.
Right. I mean, there's so much around him. Forget about the merchandise.
Right. Now, but it's I know that this is not a show it's clearly not a show about Jedi. And I don't think they want it to be a show about Jedi. So I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time there. Mm-hmm. But I can't see any reason why he wouldn't at least have maybe at least one episode where he goes and meets up with him or visits him again or something.
I would expect something like that. Yeah, for sure.
So is Grogu at Luke's school for young
where he
Jedis and then gets murdered by Kylo Ren?
Well, we're not going to go that far forward. So because this is 5 years after.
True. I gotta look at the map.
Trilogy. Yeah,
the breakdown of when.
I think Mandalorian and some of the couple shows, which we'll talk about in a moment, that are going to be spinning off from Mandalorian, are taking place in this 5 years after Return of the Jedi window. Mm-hmm. But then the new trilogy, the Force Awakens, all that stuff or whatever, Rey, that's 30 years after. Mm-hmm. So that's another 25 years down the road. Mm-hmm. So I can't imagine we're going to get into any of that. I could see maybe a young Kylo Ren showing up at the Academy or something at the end of an episode, as a little teaser that you don't really know about, but or it's for the hardcore fans. But that's a good question. Yeah. I'm curious also, are we, because I get the impression, Dave Filoni, who was one of the masterminds behind the Clone Wars and Rebels cartoons, who is one of the executive producers and directors of the news of Mandalorian, and he's going to be taking on Ahsoka, maybe Knights of the Old Republic, at least some of the Knights of the New Republic, some of the newer shows that are coming out.
Just give him everything.
Clearly and I don't blame him for this. He's like, look, I did great stuff over here in these cartoons that I want to keep running with. And so clearly he's trying to build that universe into the real, the live action Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if he's going to do more of that in the next season, or if that's more of okay, that's for the other shows now. So
interesting. Yeah.
All right, hey, before we do talk about some of these other new stuff, let's talk about Star Wars Visions. Dean, did you watch these?
I watched one or two of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Marco, I know you've seen them all. Sam, have you seen all of them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So good.
So Star Wars
is
Visions,
interesting. Yes.
it is. It's an animated series on Disney Plus. They're shorts of like maybe no more than 10 minutes each or so, 10 to 15 minutes each, and they're very anime. I'm not even gonna say anime inspired. They are actually done by anime studios.
That's it.
So they reached out to some of the most popular anime studios in the
Absolutely.
world,
Yeah.
and basically said, "Hey, we want you to make a short based in the world of Star Wars, but not necessarily bound by Star Wars canon." Like
Which I find all that very fascinating. That to me, this is like such a departure from. Right. It's just, here, go out there and you create the story. What
do what
do
you want
think
with it.
should be
And
happening
yet at the
Star
same
Wars
time,
universe?
almost every single one of them could still fit, I think. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily contradict anything major.
No, I'm saying it was fascinating that they allowed that to happen.
Right,
I mean, because
right.
I guess they really didn't know what was going to come back, right? I mean, maybe they saw anyway.
It's like fan fictions if fan fictions
Sort of.
had like
Yeah.
a spotlight.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. So, and here's the thing, like, it's kind of makes sense because, the anime style is obviously, out of Eastern culture and Japan in particular, which also heavily influenced George Lucas. The original, again, I mentioned Kurosawa earlier, like Kurosawa's works and those films about samurais and, Ronin and Rogue Warriors or whatever. All that stuff heavily influenced Star Wars. I mean, I think he originally, even before he ended up doing Star Wars, was trying to get a remake of one of Kurosawa's, I think The Last Fortress remade, and couldn't get that done, so pivoted over to this space opera thing that he was working on instead. But obviously, Jedi and lightsabers and, one man against the world and the forces of darkness, the kind of thing, all very familiar beats that he was playing with there. So it only makes sense that it comes back full circle when you come back to, hey, let's reach out to folks who make that kind of cultural impact and this kind of cultural, pieces of entertainment and let them play around in this universe a little bit too. Marco, I'll let you start here. What were your thoughts overall on Visions, and what were some of your favorite episodes?
I really liked it overall, I think. I like the combination of the samurai and Jedi, which go really well together,
Right.
obviously. And I like the way some of the studios I didn't like all of them. I wasn't real keen on the whole, I forget which number it was. It was the Mega Man looking.
Yeah, more like Astro Boy, I guess that's what they were playing
Astro
with.
Boy.
Yeah.
I reference Mega Man.
Right, no, you're right. It's the same art style. Yeah, very similar art style.
Wasn't real keen on that one. I thought that was a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But a lot of the more realistic Last Samurai kind of looking stuff.
Like the Ronin one, the first episode.
Yeah. Got me hooked real fast.
Yeah, I agree. I loved I think there was 2 episodes they did this in. One of them, what I know, was the one about the bride, like the village bride or something like that.
bride.
Yeah. I loved that one because at the end, the Jedi at the end, when she lights up her saber, and it's totally a samurai sword. It's actually got like the flat kind of samurai sword look to it. I just thought that is so cool. Like, why have we not seen something like this before?
yeah.
The Ronin one was really good, the very first one, which they've actually even written a book now already about that character, like, fleshing him out
And
a little
that's
bit
the
more.
only one that I saw, and I thought it was really well done. But
Right.
but not, I didn't know what I was expecting, but not that. And
Right.
it was kind of cool. And to your point, just the anime drawing in a completely different flavor of what the Star Wars universe had typically been before.
Yeah.
Which I still find curious that that they enabled this to occur. And where do we go with some of these storylines now? Do we go anywhere with
I don't
some of
know. I don't know that we do. Like,
that's the question.
That's a
mark in
great
my
question.
mind.
Like, do you,
are they using this as like a testing ground to see how fandom reacts to it? And then there's some, I don't know.
Well, like I said, obviously they felt enough. There was going to be enough interest in the Ronin episode that they'd already
Yes.
commissioned a book to be
Right.
written about that one. And I could see you following some plot threads with some of the others, or just them being standalones and running off in whole new directions. What do you think, Sam? What stood out to you?
I totally think it's like I would more oversee it as a standalone. I think a lot of the studios that put these like pieces together have such huge fan bases everywhere, and so they thought, oh, cool, like let's take a stab at this. Let's see how we can paint this picture and kind of attract more people to this like Star Wars like pop culture phenomena. So I loved it. I thought it was great. My favorite was the one about the elder.
Yes.
David Harbour was actually
Yep.
the master.
Yep.
Like we're watching it and Chris is like, oh, this person's in this one, this person's in this one. I thought it was great just the classic, you know, Padawan and the master kind of like vibe, but then there's this like rogue Sith maybe or something, and he's like really deadly, killing animals and people and things, and like we've got to take him down. I mean, honestly, the samurai Western thing was awesome, and I love how they did that in the first one. It was real cool. I mean, yeah, there's a book coming, but there's also T-shirts. We saw tons of like Ronin T-shirts like when we were in Disney, and I was like, whoa, that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, and you're right. Like, it's not like I'm investing in it for too long. It was like maybe 15 minutes, if that. Like, pretty, you know, easy just to watch while you're doing something else. But yeah, I mean, we finished it a couple of weeks ago, and we've since watched it since then because it's just like good. And we also noticed too, several times, I think it was probably in each episode, someone said, I've got a bad feeling about this. And we were like, there it is again. But I think just in watching heavy spoilers videos on YouTube, or we watch a guy called Screen Crush who always like shows Easter eggs and like things that you watch. And there were so many nods back to like Yoda saying this or Anakin doing this. And, you know, it felt like a respectful nod in that direction rather than like a completely separate thing that'll have like a next season and next season, which it might because this was 1, 2, 3, 4. There were a few double ups, like Trigger did a few, and I know Science Sorrow did too. So there were like 5 or 6 studios that designed these episodes. So it would be really cool to hear from more and have like a second season in the future, because that's just
imagine getting Studio Ghibli to do one of these.
Oh, that would be awesome with a great score or something. Oh my gosh, yeah. But yeah, I respected the crap out of it, and yeah, good stuff. Yeah, I got more thoughts on that and like what you can do next. But we'll get to that in a moment when we talk about the future of Star Wars here. Let's shift gears here real quick and talk a little bit about the Book of Boba Fett. So this is the next Star Wars Disney Plus series. It debuts December 29th. It was teased at the end of The Mandalorian. If you stuck around through the credits, which, you know, you're always supposed to stick around through the credits anymore, especially at the end of a season of something or the end of a movie. At the end of the credits for season 2, there was a scene where you saw Boba Fett show up at Jabba's palace with Fennec Shand, Ming-Na Wen, who, by the way, is like, seriously. So she has been a Disney princess. She's been a Marvel character, and now she's a Star Wars character. Like, how do you? She's Disney. She is like literal Disney royalty at this point. No doubt. That's just she can
100%.
do no wrong.
No doubt. So she's a great character too. So it shows the two of them basically showing up at the palace. Bib Fortuna has been sitting in Jabba's throne, running, I guess, the Empire. You know, his criminal empire since he was killed at the end of Return of the Jedi, or the beginning of Return of the Jedi, I suppose. And basically they kill him, and Boba sits down at the table, and it seems like, hey, we're going to take over. Yeah. And then there's a little Book of Boba Fett card that pops up, coming December 2021. So that is coming out at the end of the year. A trailer dropped for it. I sent it to you guys to check out. I don't feel like the trailer really shows you a lot. No, it's very light, which is fine. Than what you just gave us. Yeah, because let's be honest. Again, it's Star Wars. You don't. Yeah. You could just say Star Wars coming this date. I go, all right, I'm there.
Take my money.
I don't need to see anything more about it.
The production value is going to be as good as Mandalorian. Oh, yeah. So we know that out of the trailer. But I don't know that we have a lot more context, which is exciting, right? I mean, what are they going to explore?
It just basically looks like he's planning on kind of taking over that at least piece of the criminal underworld, which I'm curious because I don't know if you probably didn't hear about this. Marco, you might have. Sam, you might have. Years ago, at one point, there was a series that was in the works called Star Wars Underworld, which was supposed to like dive, just as it sounds, into the underworld of Star Wars and the criminal syndicates and empires. I think Boba Fett was even rumored to be part of that. That was, again, this was I think pre-Disney even, like when there was just thoughts about what they were planning on doing. This feels like maybe they're kind of picking up that thread of like, hey, let's explore the seedier side.
I thought in the trailer they kind of overtly said that or made mention of it or whatever, that's going to be explored to a certain
And it's kind of interesting because, again, Boba kind of feels like a bit of a gray area character right now, and yet he's going to potentially be taking over the criminal underworld. So I think that could be interesting. Marco, do you have any thoughts on this one?
There's not a lot of information out there yet.
It's really not.
So, I mean, it looks neat. I'm a purist. I love my Jedis in my Star Wars.
We talked about that last year. Yeah. So I don't think there'll be any Jedi in this one.
I don't think there will either. I'll still watch it and I'll still enjoy it for sure, but it's not going to get me nearly as excited as the rumors of Luke Skywalker coming back.
Right. Gotcha. I understand. Anybody else? Sam, you got any extra thoughts on this one?
Just said I'll be watching it. I mean, honestly, like you said, like Disney and Star and Lucasfilms and everything, like they could put something out and it might not even super interest me. But where am I going to be on Wednesday night or Friday night when it comes out?
Yeah.
Sitting right in front of the TV.
At this point, Disney Plus and with Star Wars, Marvel, Pixar, Disney, all that stuff, it's the Futurama take my money meme just come to life. Like that's just all it is at this point.
Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
There you go. How many more? Oh, it went up? Okay.
I signed up when Disney Plus was introduced and announced. I signed up for 3 years from the start. Like they had a 3-year package, and I was like, I got like a 3-year discount or whatever to sign up for them.
Because you knew.
I just knew. I'm just looking at it, okay, it's going to be everything Marvel's. They're going to be there. They own Star Wars now. And I have a small child, I think he was maybe 1 at the time or something, or just about to be 1 when they were introducing it. I was like, we're going to be watching plenty of Disney. It's all my favorite stuff, and it's going to be all his favorite stuff. Just here, take my money. I'm going to need Disney Plus for at least the next 3 years and probably the next 30 years, So let's be honest. Okay, so speaking of which, as we're looking forward here, as we mentioned at the end of last year, Disney and Lucasfilm came out with this huge blitz of all the Star Wars stuff that they had in the works, and there's been more announced.
Here is too long.
It's
like,
insane.
Oh my Lord.
Now, some of this stuff has kind of gone by the wayside here, but stuff will change over time as it always does. But basically, the stuff that we know is coming for sure. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which is already in production and filming, a tiny little teaser was released that not with any real footage. It was not actual footage from the show. It was just like production art and an interview with Ewan McGregor.
And when's this coming out?
Next summer sometime. I don't think they've given
22 or 23?
22.
Okay.
It's not a specific date yet, just sometime in 2022.
Got it.
I imagine we'll probably get a date soon. I wouldn't be surprised if like the end of the Boba Fett series maybe has a teaser for it, or provides a date or something for it.
Do you think when do we think it's going to start? Like in his life?
It takes place between. I think it's several years after the end of the Clone Wars, or after the end of the prequel trilogy. You're right, Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. Somewhere in the gap between that and Episode 1 or Episode 4, The New Hope.
Yes.
He's been on Tatooine for a while. The twins, or Luke, has been there with his foster family for a while, and he's been he's hanging out there, and something happens. I'm going to assume something to pull him off world at some point for a little while before he goes back and settles back in again. It has already been confirmed Hayden Christensen is returning as Anakin, which opens up a lot of questions of like, does that mean flashbacks?
Yeah. Or him
because
like processing his new like body. Because like we got that in Rogue One where he was like, oh, I got to go take this like bath for a little bit because my face melted off.
Right. Because he is, at this point in the story, he is Darth Vader. He's no longer Anakin. He's Darth Vader.
Yep.
So, but obviously, I assume it will be.
But there's a lot to fill in there.
Yeah, it'll be some way like Obi-Wan, either just dealing with the consequences of that. I'm assuming running across him maybe at some point again and having some kind of confrontation with him again. Because again, we don't know anything about that gap really. In between. We know very, very little. At least that's canonical now. All we know is if you think back to the original trilogy, at one point, Obi-Wan references him, or at one point when Vader senses him on the Death Star, he says, I haven't felt this since I was last in the presence of my old master.
Yes.
But there's no context for that. That could have literally been just a couple years before, for all we know. Yeah. And I like that because it opens that room for this to come out. Now, granted, we know very little. I'm fine with that. Again, take my money. I'll be there. I'll be watching. And I'm glad they're bringing Ewan McGregor back for it, because he did a great job, I think, as Obi-Wan.
But we have no idea how long that series is going to be.
I believe it's only 6 episodes.
And that's it? So they're going to tell all this story in 6 episodes?
They better be 2 hours each.
It's going to be fairly short. It's not here in this article I sent you, but in the little teaser video that came out a few weeks back, I think they mentioned it's only 6 episodes. So it's a fairly short one.
I don't know. We'll see.
But that's okay. I mean, you give me high production value and a pretty succinct story. I'm okay with that. This kind of fits into my overall, like, not a beef that exists anymore, but I'm so glad that in the streaming age, we've stopped with this nonsense of 22 or 23 episodes that the networks always demanded for network television because they needed to fill out an entire season.
Yes.
So that's why, like, you watch a show, like I'll go back and watch sometimes old shows that had those 22, 23 episode seasons, and there's so much junk filler in those that you can tell they were just like, we don't really have anything this week.
Gotta have a Halloween episode.
Yeah, here's some dumb bottle episode. Let's just bring in a few cast people, write some stupid concept, some fan script or whatever they send in. We'll make an episode, sure, whatever.
So there's not going to be an Obi-Wan Halloween episode.
No, gosh. Obi-Wan goes trick-or-treating.
Oh, no.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. He dresses up as Vader.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's definitely coming. At least one of the next couple after that is going to be Andor, which follows Cassian Andor from Rogue One. A prequel, obviously, is spoiler alert, didn't survive Rogue One. So there's been already some footage out about that, some production footage.
That's going to be a movie, though.
No, that's a series. It's another Disney Plus series. So that's coming. We know that's going to be coming soon, probably next year as well. Mandalorian Season 3, we don't know anything about it. Nothing's been unveiled about it. Probably the end of next year, I would imagine, again. And the Ahsoka series is definitely in the works as well. Again,
I need timelines.
Extending her story.
When are we going to fit her in with all this? We're into 2023 now, easily.
Yes, that'll probably be a 23. I would, for certain we get Obi-Wan next year. I would imagine Andor is probably next year and possibly Mandalorian 3.
You think?
I think so.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, I know you don't follow Marvel quite as much, but Marvel's basically doing this now. They're putting out 3-4 series a year now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
On top of 2 or 3 movies, 3 to 4 movies a year as well right now. So I think they're following a similar model. But yes, Ahsoka's probably another year and a half off or so. Rangers of the New Republic, which was also announced alongside Ahsoka, which again is another spinoff from Mandalorian, is presumably on the way. That one's maybe got shooken up a little because the woman who plays Cara Dune was kind of booted out of Star Wars. So she's not going to be in it. And she was going to be one of the key figures. So I imagine that's still in the works, but nothing new about that. And then you've got a lot of other stuff that has been announced, but no more detail. The Acolyte, which apparently takes place during the High Republic days, so way back. And presumably supposedly has a lead female character who may or may not be someone on the Sith side of things. A Lando series, which
to me is interesting.
So, and my question about this is because do you do it with Donald Glover,
right,
who played him in the Solo movie, or maybe both, or do you do it with Billy D. Williams? Because there was, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, there's like all these little dangling threads they threw out there.
Yes.
And one of them was like him talking to, I cannot remember the woman's name, but like one of the characters that they found on the planet where the Death Star crashed down, the second Death Star. Endor, outside of Endor, basically, like on the planet that Endor, I guess that is Endor itself. The planet Endor. And they had mentioned, like, I don't know where I'm from. They'd been former stormtroopers, I guess, maybe at some point. Yeah. They didn't know where they were from. And he's like, well, let's go find out, Lando says at the end. So are we going to pick up on that thread? Do we flashback? Do we have a little of both, maybe? I don't know. Because I think most people would want to see Donald Glover as Lando more at this point than Billy D. Williams.
Yeah.
So I could see you maybe doing a little bit of both in some way, like having something where he's helping them on their quest, but then there's flashing back to his younger days.
Yeah, like what's the plot too? Because I know he was doing pretty like skeezy stuff with Han.
Yeah,
right. I mean, not that we're gonna go like full crime syndicate like maybe Boba Fett is doing. Right. But are they just like doing spice runs or something?
Yeah, smuggling stuff.
Minorly.
What mischief do they get into?
Yeah.
So a lot of possibilities there. And so now all this stuff we've been talking about so far has all been Disney Plus TV series. So on the film world, we are kind of out in no man's land right now. So the biggest announcement had been that Patty Jenkins, director of Wonder Woman, and she did some of the Twilight movies too, didn't she?
I don't know.
Maybe?
Who, Patty Jenkins?
Yeah, I think she did. One of them, maybe. One of the first ones or something. She was going to do a Rogue Squadron movie. So, not really sure when it was going to be based. I don't think they'd officially announced that, but presumably post Return of the Jedi. And then Rian Johnson, who directed The Last Jedi, the controversial Last Jedi, we all have differing opinions about here. He had been set up to do a trilogy as well.
A trilogy, not just one.
Right, a trilogy, right. That has all been shelved, apparently over creative differences.
Oh.
Which is Disney's way of saying, like, hey, we have a specific thing we wanted you to do, and you're trying to go in your own direction, and we don't like that.
Yes.
So both of those projects have been shelved indefinitely, which means they will probably never happen. The only film that's currently still supposedly in the works is one by Taika Waititi, who is most notable these days for doing the last Thor movie and the next Thor movie that's coming out as well. So right now, like we have no Star Wars on the big screen in the future for at least I'd say 3 to 4 years probably at this point from where we are. Because if Rogue Squadron was going to be 23, like, you know, and the time it takes to get a production together, and assuming we've shelved that and there's nothing else that's really being worked on right now actively, we're looking at 25, 26 before we even see another Star Wars film on the big screen. Before we dive then further into that, I'm just curious from all of your points of view, like what are you excited about with the new stuff coming? What are you most looking forward to? What are you most interested in? What are your thoughts about so much new content coming? Marco, you haven't spoken in a while. What do you got here?
I'm not sure anything super exciting yet. Especially going when you say it like that, and that there's no movies for the foreseeable future.
Right.
Like, and I'm sure it's a strategic move on Disney's part to, I don't know,
maybe put some distance.
Yeah,
between the Skywalker saga.
It definitely appears what they're doing because of the controversy that Ryan started. And I know that was his whole thing. That's what he wanted to do.
Right.
I fell on the side that I didn't agree with him. Okay, cool. But now, like, if you're going to put some distance between it and try to make me forget about all that stuff and then start fresh with a new storyline, or I don't know what you're going to do yet. So there's a lot of things that I'm interested in seeing, but I'm not super excited about.
The series don't excite you as much as more movies would at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a film guy. I think you can tell a better story.
Okay.
In a film.
Oh man, I think just the opposite.
Oh
yeah. Well,
yeah. What do you guys think?
But that's a little bit of the change that's going on. But anyway, yeah. What you got?
Any extra thoughts on all the new stuff?
I think it'd be too hard to pick back up with a new storyline. Like just 3 new movies somewhere else, like just brand new characters and stuff like that, or even a build on of that. And I disagree with you, Marco. I think the shows can be, you know, I mean, like we're just getting plot holes filled. Context clues are just being like added. And so I love that because, you know, oh, let's tuck this in here. Let's tuck this in there. And, you know, films are definitely great. And I miss going to movie theaters. I cannot wait to go to one to just like sit there and like be with people and like, hello.
You can in the metaverse, but anyway.
Oh, shucks. Okay.
There you go. There's the future.
True.
Throwback to last week's episode. Yeah.
Funny. But no, just to smell like the crappy smells. Yeah, I can't wait for that. Can't wait for that. Oh, gosh, yeah. But I think, yeah, Disney definitely saw the value of shows, and they're just, you know, people are streaming. People are, oh, I'm going to buy this package. Didn't know there were packages, but that's awesome.
Right.
So just more shirt and the merch and the stuff that comes out of it. And like, you know, from a Marvel perspective, they did so well. We've had 4 shows already in 2021. And I mean, you would just see like, the Loki show happened, and then in Disneyland that next week they've got a whole new slew of actors that are being Loki, and there's merchandise and you know the profit they made on all of that. So I think they just see the value more now of shows, and I see it too because you know, who knows how long, is it the Omicron variant now? I mean, am I going to be inside for another like year? I need something to watch. I'll have something to watch.
Yep. Exactly.
I love the fact that they're filling in the holes too. I love the series. I think that, you know, I'll be all in. I'm most excited about Obi-Wan, obviously, Mando 3. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Got to watch that. And then the Ahsoka. You've convinced me that is going to be like, that's maybe the one I'm most excited about.
Which is good considering you don't have much context for her.
I don't.
I do need to get her to try to give you like a, I don't know, primer on Ahsoka for the cartoons to watch sometime. Because it is worth it to understand. And granted, I have a feeling the series will, you know, because they're not going to go into this series being like, well, we've assumed you've all watched the cartoons. Go watch, 7 seasons of Clone Wars and 3 seasons of Rebels.
They have to play to somewhat like people like me if they want the brand to continue and have context.
Hayden has been also confirmed as being in the Ahsoka series as well, which that I assume will have to be flashbacks so that you can have that context of like,
there you go.
Because Mandalorian gives you no context for her whatsoever.
No.
Those of us that know her were like, yes. But outside of of that, she's just some cool Jedi that showed up with 2 lightsabers and kicking butt.
But what I think that they've done a really good job in, even for those that don't know, I mean, the story is just seamless, right? And the production, the story value is there. It's interesting to see whether or not they'll be able to keep that high value, number one, and keep the integrity of the canon, I guess, of what is a Star Wars story moving forward when you have all these different things that you're trying to create.
Yeah.
Maybe Marvel can get away with it, but Star Wars, I feel like, is under a different lens when it comes to the fandom and how this is going to be now orchestrated and how the stories are told. They're going to have some flops along the way, right? Probably.
Yeah.
But how will people react to that? But anyway, I'm excited in general.
Yeah, me too.
Because I think it's really well done, easy to get absorbed into.
So let's get into the last part of the conversation here. This kind of picks up on a thread you and Marco and I were talking about a couple weeks ago when we were talking about some of this stuff being announced, and in particular the movies that had been scrapped, which is I'm starting to wonder, like, is the future of Star Wars going to be actually these streaming series? Like, is the movies still? Let's be honest, we're going to see more Star Wars movies. That's inevitable. But I think what we've kind of hinted, yes,
Okay.
they're not gonna run away from that. But I think what we've kind of hinted at here, and the bigger issue, and maybe more so than any other franchise. And Marco, you kind of hinted this yourself when you said earlier, hey, I like my Star Wars with Jedis in it. That's my preference. I think the general consensus is that probably is the expectation as well. But I'm a believer that, and I mentioned this on last year's Star Wars episode, that Star Wars can be a place.
Yes.
It can be
It's
this
a
world
universe.
that you can tell, like The Mandalorian, you can tell a samurai Western story in the context of Star Wars. And yes, some Jedi showed up because people want the Jedi to show up. But there are other episodes, there are other shows coming that probably won't. Like we mentioned, Book of Boba Fett, probably not going to be any Jedi in that. There might be a reference, probably not any Jedi, but there's still a connective tissue to the original trilogy. I'm at the point where I'm okay with Star Wars stories that have nothing to do with anything we've ever seen in Star Wars before.
It's just a place.
I'm okay with just, you've got a couple movies that are over here in this corner of the universe where it's got familiar stuff. We're familiar with multiple planets and different aliens and blasters and starships. We understand the fundamental physics of Star Wars, and you can tell a story within that. It could be a love story. It could be a Western, another type of Western story, a traditional Western. It could be anything,
Something, yeah, right.
It could be a drama, it could be just a dramatic series, about, life on the rim, kind of thing. Like, there's no reason why you couldn't do that. But I also acknowledge that it's going to be very hard to make that happen in film.
Ah, yes.
Because there's such a high level of expectation from not just the fan base, but just an audience in general. Because this is what I kind of mentioned to you, when we were talking about this before, is you can't make a Star Wars movie that's not expected to make $1 billion at this point.
This is true. Yeah.
If you do, it's considered a failure.
Yeah.
It could be the number 10 highest grossing movie of all time, and people would still go, could have been better. Could have done more if you'd just done this or that.
Right.
If you'd had a Jedi pop up, it could have been better.
Yeah.
So I worry that there's that kind of constraint, which keeps them
But
from.
I don't know.
From
Maybe
doing
that's
that.
being mitigated a little bit through these series.
That's my expectation. That's my
Right.
hope. Is maybe that this kind of puts us a new path. And I know, Marco, you'd kind of say, well, maybe they at some point take these, or maybe you said take one of these series and evolve it into a movie. But I don't know that they can ever really do that either, because again, you have that expectation that somebody's been watching one of those
But I'm
series.
going to connect the dots into your Nirvana. Like, let's say Lando on one of his spice runs goes to a part of the universe that we don't know.
Right.
And now we can explore that part. And the only connection is this spice run that was done or something like
But
that.
I guess if the series and the story was compelling enough that people wanted more, because that's kind of what Marvel's trying to
the
do.
end of the road, yeah.
Marvel hit this point where they're like, all right, we've told all these movie stories. We've got you to follow us through 20 plus movies already to tell this massive story. We're kind of shifting into a new era of it. And this is, I think, where Star Wars is at too. Like, look, Skywalker saga is done. We're done with this. We may have some touch points along the way, but at this point, I don't want to see another Skywalker film. I don't care about the Skywalkers anymore. That story's over. I want something where a character doesn't appear that is somehow related to someone who was in the original trilogy. Like, oh, that happened to be Luke Skywalker's nephew's grandson's.
You can't be done with it.
I'm not saying done. I'm saying done with a story that has to be utterly related. Like, okay, let's say this.
Okay.
What if Mandalorian, you got to a point where the Mandalorian was revealed as being Han Solo's younger brother that you never heard about? I would have been pissed.
Gotcha.
If you had done that, I would have been like, screw this. Why did
You're milking it.
Why did he have to be related to him? I'm fine with Luke showing up to save the day and taking Grogu. That was fun. That was cool.
It made for a good story.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want the main character to somehow be tied into this other storyline that's been happening across the universe.
That's fair.
And just coincidentally, he happens to be related to somebody. That was one of my big beefs with the new trilogy in general and where they ended things in Rise of Skywalker. I'm just like, and it was part of why, we had this discussion last year. Like, I liked The Last Jedi because I liked the idea of being like, you know what? New Force wielders and new Jedi can appear that have nothing to do with these other idiots that we've seen already. They can just happen because the Force is out there, and it's this powerful thing that if someone can tap into it, they can be a Jedi, even if their bloodline isn't connected to a Skywalker or a Palpatine or whoever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where
the
I
whole
am with it.
midichlorian thing. They don't have that in their blood.
Which, by the way, if you notice, like in Mandalorian, they did kind of reference. They talked about M count.
Yes,
they never said midichlorians, but they mentioned it.
Yes.
And I was one of those things where I'm like, I heard him say it, and I go, now for some reason, midichlorians pissed me off when you introduced them in the prequels. But you saying M count and just kind of making this vague reference to it,
A little better.
didn't bug me as much.
Yeah, a little better. Okay.
I still think it was weird, but it didn't bug me as much.
Sam, how's your M count?
Oh, low.
Low.
Wait, who do you think is the highest M count in this room?
You.
Me?
Yeah.
Definitely.
You think I'm most likely to have tapped into the Force?
Well, yeah. If you started levitating me, I'd be okay with that. Marco would be over there.
Stay tuned for the next episode of the podcast. Yeah, Marco would have force choked us like 20 episodes ago.
Oh, lightning everywhere.
There would be one of those days when we were goofing off and not getting started on time or running over. We'd be running over the hour mark, and he'd just be there, just instead of doing his usual like that in the background, he'd be just choking like, "That's it for the TEConnect podcast."
Her budget didn't get approved.
Maybe.
All right. Do you guys have any other thoughts about like what's next in the Star Wars land? Like, do we, what your expectations are?
You were talking about the spinoffs and the shows and the smaller shows. I think that's a good idea, and I think those can tell really good micro stories. I think they need to be really careful that we don't get another Ewoks.
True.
And try to
We got against Ewoks.
I think Sam
nothing
loves the
against
Ewoks.
just that we don't get this completely random force-fed kind of thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's interesting because somebody's mentioned before, like, who is the Kevin Feige of Star Wars? Kevin Feige is the mastermind behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that's probably it. Or Jon Favreau, depending on which one you want to, because they both kind of work together on Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. But yes, I agree, because I think you need a bit of a guiding hand, and especially now that Lucas is out of the picture, because Lucas's guiding hand clearly was not it. It was kind of part of the problem for a while. Mm-hmm. I think, and we talked about this last year, like, all respect to the man, like, I have to revere him because he created this universe that we're having a whole freaking podcast about Star Wars for a reason.
Yeah.
But understanding that maybe we've reached a point where we need some kind of guiding force that is holding this all together and has something of a vision that you can kind of put at the top of things. And you're right. I think Dave Filoni might be it, but we haven't really established that yet.
I don't know. It's either that or are we going to crowdsource it from here on out?
I don't know. That's just it. It's like crowdsourcing could be okay, but I worry if you do that, I don't know, because there's a place where I think like Star Wars Visions, for instance, the fact that is so disparate and disconnected, and yet works so well, because I watched all of those, and even the ones I didn't like as much as others, I'm like, I think it's just so cool that somebody got to come in here and play with this universe.
That's my point, that they
were
able to.
Fun.
It was a sandbox. Right. They were like, okay, just go play.
But that's just it. I worry, like, I like that is something that can only exist like in a streaming series. No. You're never going to get people to sign off on a movie where someone just says, "Hey, go play in the Star Wars sandbox and do what you want." Yeah. That's what I think Rian Johnson tried to do and kind of got shot out of the water for it.
But there's a little bit of brilliance in the crowdsource that they pick out the gems that are connected.
Yes, I agree.
And then develop off of those.
Yeah. I agree. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with where we are right now. I'm looking forward to all these shows. None of these shows, maybe the Lando show is the only one where I'm just like, but I'm sure a trailer will come out and I'll get all excited. It's probably because I didn't like the Solo movie that much, so I'm not kind of indifferent to that.
I would rather watch a movie about Chewbacca.
Well, I think that would be a good movie. The
I would rather not understand anything they're saying.
That would be awesome. The entire movie. There's no subtitles. It's just like it's a foreign film with no subtitles, basically.
No dub.
Awesome. I think that'd be fun. All right. Any other thoughts before we conclude here?
No, but I'm a little down now that like Disney is taking over and not doing films. They're kind of got shelved.
I mean, they're going to do films. They're just.
So does that mean Disney's still going to be the overlord?
Oh
of
yeah.
The whole thing? Yeah.
This is Disney's property now.
Yeah,
Like,
I understand, but
they've got all the things in their sandbox now.
Yeah, all right. Fair enough.
We'll see what happens next. All right. Hey, before we wrap up here, I want to, as always, thank our sponsors, Elo, Epson, Honeywell, and Zebra. Once again, you didn't expect a Star Wars. Yeah, you should have expected a Star Wars episode. Come on.
Yeah, by now.
I'm just going to warn, we're doing this every year. If you're signing on for at least one Star Wars episode every single year. Sorry, you just are.
Yeah.
Hopefully you like it. But I've also going to throw out, once again, our challenge to our listeners. We need topics. Dean and I can come up with plenty of stuff. Our sponsors help us find some topics, but we do. We're doing like 40-odd episodes a year.
But we want to know what's happening out in the real world, right?
We want to hear from you. If you're listening, if you're watching, if you're a regular, are there topics you want to hear about? Is there stuff that we haven't covered?
Explore? What do we need to do a little mini series on?
Are there topics that we got into last year that we never, got back around to that you want to hear more about? Are there some of our hardware manufacturers or software partners you'd love to hear from? What do you want to hear? And the challenge is, if you tell us what you want to hear, you can get some free stuff out of it. I mean, you just got to type an email or a tweet to us and you get something for free.
Tell them what they could win, John.
They can get, if we pick your idea and use it on the show, we'll give you $100.
Yes. Bing.
Easy money.
Easy money.
I mean, just give us a good idea.
Like legit.
Yeah, a legit good idea. Yeah. Now, I mean, if you send me one that says like, do 5 episodes about Star Wars, we're like, here,
yeah, really.
ching, ching, ching.
Sure.
I'll give you $500.
Well, we have to.
Look, the people said it. It's what they wanted.
Right,
Yeah,
it's what they wanted.
This is now a Star Wars podcast. Tell us what you want. We'll give you $100 for that. If we don't take your idea, simply for giving us a suggestion, we will give you a TEConnect podcast T-shirt
that you can wear proudly.
Yes. So you can show everybody that you listen to a podcast they've never heard of.
There you go.
So that's what you get here. So you get a T-shirt, regardless, and potentially a chance to get $100. So please send us your ideas. You can tweet at us at TEConnectPod. You can also email us TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, hey, let's wrap things up here. What's tech connecting with you? Last year we picked like our favorite piece of tech, I think, for Star Wars.
Yep.
Let's do a little something different. Let's reminisce about Star Wars merchandise as we sat here with our lightsabers, playing with them. Well, Dean's playing with one of mine, but you know. We obviously like Star Wars merch. If you're a Star Wars fan, at some point you have had Star Wars merch. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's almost impossible not to.
Yeah.
If you're in I think even casual Star Wars fans have probably had some kind of Star Wars related merch at some point.
Yeah, some sort.
So I want you to think back and think about what is some of your favorite merch from Star Wars you've had over the years. Sam, I'll let you start this one.
Oh gosh. I mean, obviously the lightsabers, but I don't know. I mean, definitely like going back to my origin story of Star Wars fandom. My brother had like all the Lego sets. Like we never got like the Millennium Falcon, but we had a lot of the setup and the little guys that we would take places and lose and you know, had to get a replacement piece or whatever. So, and I think as kids and well, I mean, I was like a teenager, but it was still fun to play with. And Legos are still cool. I mean, when we went to Disney, Chris was like, can we go to the Lego store? And I was like, yeah, of course, obviously. I totally want to go there too. So that's I think Legos. That's probably my fave Star Wars merch.
Yeah, and Legos are still super relevant.
Oh yeah,
my daughter, my 10-year-old
Well, you can buy
daughter.
those like 10,000 piece sets now of like the Death Star and Star Destroyers.
Just printing money.
Yeah, here's $300 for you.
Because I just did it the other. She's into Harry Potter, so the whole Harry Potter world we're building. Yeah, but it's like $120 for 1,000 pieces, and she's done in like 30 hours.
It's just there now.
Yeah,
right. For this thing that you just look at.
Yet, but anyway, that's crazy.
Yeah, I can't wait until my son gets like he's not into Legos yet because it's still a little too small for him. I think But yeah, when he does, like I'm gonna find every excuse I can to bust one of those out for Christmas sometime or something. You're like, well, honey, he loves Legos and he loves Star Wars. We got to get this Star Destroyer, and then we'll spend hours in the basement putting it together. You'll have actually wandered off to go watch something else.
You're still there.
And I'm like, yes, childhood relived. Yeah.
I'm going to reminisce a little bit more. I'm going to go way back because the first toy that I had coming out of Star Wars was the land speeder. Do you remember?
Oh yeah.
I have a I found one online.
Did not have that, but I like it.
It's the land speeder that's got, it's got Luke and Obi-Wan in there. We got a stormtrooper. You got C-3PO and R2.
But those figures didn't come in the box. Figures not included. I guarantee you they weren't included.
Okay, maybe
Luke. I don't know.
All I can remember is playing with this thing,
right?
And because I don't remember like an X-wing or anything like that.
Did you sit there and look at it and kind of disappointed because it didn't hover off the ground?
Right? Dunk, dunk.
You're just holding it up. Going,
no, because my imagination was going, dude. That thing went everywhere,
right,
all over the place. And I'm pretty sure I had an AT-AT as well. I think those came out.
It was so much better than mine.
Yeah,
I had a TIE fighter.
Now, when I was a little bit older, right, we started blowing them up with like firecrackers and stuff like that. So it may have, because there was this weird time.
Imagine how much money you could have right now if you weren't blowing up those toys.
100%.
Yeah.
But Evil Knievel and getting that whole thing, and then you mix in some Barbies, and it's boys with lighters, and it gets really bad really soon. But anyway, that I played with immensely, and so yeah, I do wish I still had that thing.
Gotcha.
That would have been kind of cool. Anyway,
Marco, what about you?
Yeah, what'd you have, Marco?
I won't go quite as far. I do have some old stuff that I could talk about, but one of the more recent things that I really like are the Pops.
Oh, like the Funko Pop stuff?
Yeah, the Funko Pops. I got a Chewbacca one recently that is felt.
Oh,
and I was like,
cool.
This is the coolest thing ever.
I'm scared to get into Funko Pops. I'm worried that it's going to be an addiction.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like if I started getting too many, my wife would be like, what do you think you're doing? Why do we have another one of these? Where are you going to put these?
Yep. And it quickly will be.
Yeah. I don't want to. Well, I was just showing you earlier before we went on the Luke from the Mandalorian Funko Pop that's coming out in February with like a glowing lightsaber. It looks ridiculously cool.
Yep.
So, okay, let's see. For me, I mean, I kind of have to start with the lightsabers because this is like the culmination of like my fandom right here.
Yes.
Like getting to go to Galaxy's Edge at Disney World and getting to make my own lightsaber. Like that event I told you about, like if you're a Star Wars fan and you can do it at some point, it's a little pricey. It's pricey to go to Disney World for one thing.
Yeah.
And then to go make your own lightsaber, it is an experience. If you are a Star Wars person, it is an experience unlike anything else.
It's on the bucket list, right?
Like I admit, like it's one of those things. When I held my lightsaber up for the first time and turned it on, like I could, like there was the glaze was happening in my eyes. Like like I was looking at everything through a little mistiness. Yoda's voice is coming on. Like can't argue with that. I had plenty of the toys back in the day. Like I said, I think a TIE fighter might have been the best like ship that I ever got. My parents, didn't have a lot of money. They bought me a lot of the action figures, but I didn't have a lot of the the actual vehicles and stuff.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to call out here though is when the prequels came out starting in '99, I was working in retail at a bookstore at the time. I think I've referenced that before on the show. And so of course, just like, a new Star Wars means new merchandise. So beyond the toys, there was boatloads of all kinds of books that came out. Tie-in novels, books, the technical manuals, behind the scenes stuff, children's books, you name it, there was tons of books. Well, man, they went all out for this. I guess at the time, the publisher, probably Bantam, I think maybe. It may have been Del Rey. I don't remember who was publishing at the time. They would send all kinds of cool stuff to merchandise their books. Mm-hmm. And the best things ever was for the first, I think for episode 1, they would send full-size cardboard that you had to build, 3-dimensional cardboard droids.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we got multiples of these.
Okay.
So they found their way into my apartment.
I was about to say, yes, right.
So there was the actual, like, just the fighter droids, like the standard, the clone, not the clone, the Trade Federation droids or whatever, the walking dumb droids or whatever in the prequel movies. One of those, and it was literally like, it just came on like sheets of about 20 or 30 sheets of hard cardboard that you had to like punch out. It took like hours to put together, fold it all together, and build this droid that stood on a pedestal, and then had like underneath of it a container to put books in to show off the books.
Yeah.
Well, we got one for the store. I put it up in the front window. I'm like, this is awesome. And then they sent us another one. I'm like, that one's coming home with me. And then they sent us another one for the battle droids, the rolling battle droids, the ones that roll up into a ball and roll around or whatever.
Yes.
And we had no room for that, so I'm like, that one's coming home with me too. So I literally
To this day, do you have them?
No, I don't anymore, unfortunately. Like it's the kind of thing like they wouldn't survive moves very well.
Yeah.
Like it was, like if you try to move it too much after you'd built it, it started falling apart. And so my first apartment is at the same time I had my first apartment, and of course, it was all nerded out.
Right.
Didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and so no one was there to tell me no and not let me do this. So I had these droids in my apartment for a long time, and I do remember when I finally moved out of that apartment, probably 5-6 years later, and I knew I just didn't have, I knew the battle droid wasn't going to make it with me, so we ceremoniously, before I left, I was living on the top floor of the apartment, threw it off of the top floor balcony. Because it was the easiest way to get it outside and then take it to the trash anyway. So, but man, those things were just cool. It was just something cool that you couldn't just go buy them in a store.
Right. Absolutely.
It was my little insider, from my job to be able to take something home like that with me. So that was a Star Wars thing that I will always remember having. So. All right, that does it for us. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you're not a Star Wars fan, I'm assuming you're not still hanging around. Unless you just love to hear our voices. If you are, I hope you enjoy this conversation. We'll do this again next year, I promise.
Yep.
We'll probably be talking about more, of the new stuff that's happened since then. So next week, we're going to be back with our last episode of this year. It's our year in review wrap-up. So come back for that, and then we're going to take a little bit of time off to finish off the year. But thank you so much for watching. Until next time, may the Force be with you, and stay connected. Elo is bringing decades of touchscreen experience to the palm of your hand. Introducing the M50 handheld mobile computer, an enterprise-grade Android device built for efficiency and connectivity. With a 5.5-inch HD touch display, integrated 2D barcode scanner, Android 10 OS, and a rugged design for commercial use, the M50 is ready to seamlessly integrate via EloView or the MDM of your choice. Long battery life, quick charge, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or 4G communications, and plenty of accessories make the M50 a bold new choice for enterprises like warehousing, retail, healthcare, delivery, and more. To learn more about the M50, now in stock and ready to ship, check out the link in the show notes or contact BlueStar's Elo team. Introducing the RFD40 UHF RFID sled, Zebra's latest flexible RFID offering with superior read performance. Compatible with the latest and future Zebra mobile computers, the RFD40 delivers industry-best read performance at 1,300 plus tag reads per second, an optimized read range, and an increased 7,000 mAh battery capacity that decreases time spent on cycle counting and inventory. Workers can change the sled and mobile computer at the same time and easily switch between different mobile devices. The state-of-the-art Rain RFID sled has durable drop specs, optimal battery performance, and the superior ergonomic design you've come to expect from Zebra. Check out the link in the show notes for more info on this budget-friendly, future-proof solution.